a sixth film in this franchise. They are currently working on a new Final Destination movie.
They basically announced that this is in the works over at New Line, another Final Destination movie.
Final Destination 6. It's happening. But after covering near-death experiences involving a plane crash, highway pileup, roller coaster derail, NASCAR disaster, and a bridge collapse, what is in store for the next installment of Final Destination? Could fan-favorite character William Bloodworth be involved? Stay tuned. We're toying with having it take place in the world of first responders, EMTs, firemen, and police, Perry said. These people deal with death on the front lines every day and make choices that can cause people to live or die. We're thinking that world might be an interesting way into a Final Destination movie, and one which can also generate unique set pieces in a very credible way. That's what series producer Craig Perry had to say about the next Final Destination. But what I want to know is how this film actually fits into the canon. As someone who made a 30-minute video where I basically put everything, the movies, the books, and comics into chronological order, I want to know where this movie takes place. The lore is important to me. The danger with coming out with a new installment after such a long gap is that these tend to reboot the franchise, which means we'd be starting over with all new lore. However, according to an interview that series creator Jeffrey Reddick had with BD, that will probably not be the case with the new Final Destination, but it will be set in a different world. So what does that mean? A couple of possibilities come to mind. There's one scene that has always intrigued me about the original Final Destination, and it's not that part where Death hides the evidence of how it took out Todd, even though nothing like that happens in any of the other movies. It's the part where Clear and Alex sit on the beach together, look up at the stars, and wonder what life would be like if the disasters that impacted both of their lives had never happened.
You think they're still up there? Somehow? Flight 180, are they still in flight? Somewhere? Are they safe?
I have thought a lot about that somewhere, Alex. It exists, that place, where my dad is still safe, and I have no idea about this life here. Where our friends are still in the sky. Where everyone gets a second chance.
It exists. A world where Flight 180 landed safely exists. What if Final Destination has a split timeline? I would argue that it already does. In the original movie, Flight 180 went down in the year 1999, but in each of the sequels, the events took place in 2000. Sure, this might just be a retcon, but I've come to justify it as two similar timelines where most of the events are the same, but in the sequel universe, everything takes place a year later. In fact, the very concept of the series seems to prove this to be true. The visions that each protagonist has are what is supposed to happen, but they make changes. They alter their destinies to survive. Each time this happens, they create a new split in the timeline. The world where they don't intervene, it exists, they just don't go down that path. Now, the original 5 are a set. They go together. I think there's no way to avoid the next movie feeling different given how much time has passed. It's like how you can put an old photo filter on a new photo, but it never feels quite the same as a picture that was taken during that era. So making a new continuity on a new timeline branch could help alleviate that issue and prevent the new movie from stepping on the original 5, which could upset fans. We've seen this approach taken with the Halloween franchise, basically becoming a choose-your-own-adventure, but the idea fits much better with Final Destination, where there's an in-universe explanation for it. But what if I'm taking Jeffrey Reddick's word a little too literally? Maybe when he said it takes place in a new world, all he meant was that instead of taking place in the world of teenagers and young adults, it takes place in the world of emergency responders and healthcare workers. Speaking of which, there's something that I have to do. If we ever want to see Final Destination 6, it's entirely dependent on ending the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's becoming clear that the only way that's going to happen is if the population gets vaccinated. I wanted to show my experience so that everyone knows there's nothing to be afraid of. The needle is so small, you don't really even feel it go in. I had a little bit of soreness for the next day or two, but it was never painful. The night after the second dose, I was feverish and had chills and a headache, but there was never a moment where I felt scared, because I knew this was the vaccine going to work in my body to protect me. And the vaccine doesn't contain the virus. How it works is the vaccine basically contains the instructions that teach your body how to produce the viral proteins that'll be recognized by your immune system. So if the virus, SARS-CoV-2, enters your system, your body will already know how to defeat it and prevent you from getting COVID-19. It's basically your final destination vision that can protect you from disaster, because without the vaccine, you could become infected, and nobody can predict how sick you might get. It could be mild, severe, or life-threatening, not to mention other symptoms that may last for months or longer. And don't worry, I made sure to run that by a few medical professionals before I said it out loud on the internet. Now, I certainly hope the new Final Destination isn't about a pandemic, though. I think this era represents a cultural shift for us. Horror was super popular from 2014 to 2018 with a lot of darker stories like It, Split, and A Quiet Place, and I can see the genre swinging back to something more lighthearted. Much like how grunge was the dark and serious dominant genre of the 90s, but it got a little bit too depressing for people after Kurt Cobain, and that's when we started seeing the snot-nosed pop punk acts blowing up, Blink-182, Sum 41, Green Day 75. So I think the time is going to be right for a Final Destination 6. They've got the perfect writers for it, Marcus Dunstan and Patrick Melton, the guys who did Saw 4 through 7. What makes Saw such an awesome franchise is the later sequels don't suck that much for the most part, and they even honor the continuity. It feels right for these guys to give the same treatments to the other big 2000s horror series. Jeffrey Reddick has insisted that the 6th is not a reboot, but curiously mentions another world. The statement seems to contradict itself. I've explored what the movie might look like if we take his words literally, but what if we take them figuratively? Operating in the world of first responders, EMT, firemen, and police affords an interesting opportunity. These are all government workers that might show up to the scene of a disaster and are likely to have interactions with a medical examiner. Could we see the return of William Bloodworth? Now, when I made the horror history episode on Bloodworth, I theorized that he could have been an escapee of Death's design. This character is shrouded in mystery, and I always thought it would be cool to explore his past and to learn how he came to be so knowledgeable about how Death operates. I think it would definitely be interesting to see a prequel where a young Bloodworth sees the horrors of how his choices affect people's lives in the front line and transitions to the role of medical examiner so that he can be an expert on death, namely how to avoid it. If you want to hear more about my theory, click that video on the left, and if you love horror, remember to subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ring the death bell for all notifications, and I'll see you in the next one. Assuming we both survive.